figure out how to get on.
Yeah, leave it to the professionals to not be able to figure out how to show up for our show.
I was telling Matt that like when you're in like these studios, you have a million buttons. You probably just forgot which button to press.
Yeah, totally. That's probably what it was.
I've got one button. It's on and off. Let me get rid of that. Actually, that's a little annoying. There we go.
There we go. That's post-production as far as we can go right there. Marcus, if you haven't figured out, we started without you, but feel free to jump on whenever you can. We run a tight ship here.
That's right.
Welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet sometimes, depending if their technology works. We have AD Robles.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Do you survive the firestorms on social media this week?
Man, barely, by the skin of my teeth.
Oh,
I feel like most of the people that matter have like unfollowed me or muted me because I don't really people don't get uppity about what I say anymore. They're just ignoring me for the most part.
I still feel like I have some leftovers from my tech days when I had a tech company and I had I never really posted anything Christian or whatever. I was just always posting tech related things and stuff that had to do with my company. And now whenever I like mention the patriarchy or something like that, I will noticeably have drop off. Cycling them out.
Good. You got to manage that list, you know?
You do. You got to keep it fresh. Someone else keeping it fresh is King Ginger. Marcus Pittman is scheduled to be on the show. He said some very interesting things about capitalism and socialism that people got really upset about, and a really liberal organization retweeted it and talked about it. The SBC. I mean, no, it wasn't the SBC. Not that liberal organization. It was a Vox. So hopefully we'll get him on to talk about that. We have tons of other great stuff we're going to talk about today. We got some stuff in the SBC going on. Hey, AD, have you been following that at all? What's going on in the SBC?
A little bit, yeah. There's some controversy about they hate women or something like that.
Yes. There's a group of people that hate women, and they're really upset that they have a woman pastor who's coming to preach, even though she's not coming as a preacher. She's leaving her preaching status back in her home city, and she's just going to bring herself and talk, which is really confusing to me. It's all these preachers. So we'll talk about that.
You got a preacher hat, and then you take off your preacher hat. You're not a preacher anymore.
You know what's funny, AD, what I was thinking about when I read this article? There's like a response by the leader of the SBC. And I was like, is she like wearing a wizard hat? Do these people actually have wizard hats?
Did you see JD Greer say that he's something about pulling the curtain of the wizard?
I did.
That is official confirmation. I'm saying it here that the president of the SBC watches your boy AD.
A Presbyterian.
I've been talking about wizards for the last 3 weeks. And all of a sudden, JD Greer just happens to talk about wizards too.
Yeah, no way.
Come on.
Is totally, for sure, you're watching you. I mean, we live rent-free in their minds, I'm telling you. And then I wanted to also kind of talk about something encouraging. I thought our show last week had such great points, and we talked about such great things, but I really kind of felt burdened about what we were talking about, how people they grow up in the church and then they leave and they go sow their wild oats. They go get crazy. They come back with a kid. They come back with an STD, whatever it is. And they realize that was just wrong. And we were talking about and I think you said it actually, is sometimes the Jesus answer isn't enough. Like we need to start applying it, and we need more solutions. We need more answers to give these people than simply Jesus is not enough. So I wanted to kind of just give some encouragement to young people that may be watching this. Things that maybe we wish we heard about or someone told us about when we were growing up in church to do, and we'll do much more. But before that, make sure that you're following us. Reformgelical on the social media sites, patreon.com/reformgelical. I had a really bad time before. I would always say / and my wife would yell at me. So now I just say / so I don't ever confuse.
Good. You figure it out. It's one of the slashes. It's two. You got 50-50.
50-50 for sure. And then also we're going to talk about King Ginger and all of his social media endeavors today and the backlash. I mean, his Twitter blew up. I was kind of jealous about it, honestly.
Yeah, I'm always like very like I've got a mixed feeling there because I really want that to happen to me, but at the same time, I kind of don't.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
I forgot who it was. It was some really, a big a notable conservative, but somebody just totally wrote a slanderous article about them. Like, it was a publication. I was like, man, someday I hope that I'm that influential that someone will write something as slanderous about them,
right?
About me.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, do I really want that? Maybe I should just delete that tweet and not ask for it.
Right. If it comes, you can embrace it, but I don't know if I'd necessarily want it, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's just start with the positive today. I want to encourage young people with maybe some words of wisdom, things that I wish people would tell me beforehand. Some things that maybe we can help encourage the young people with to fight the good fight and finish strong and not go off and go crazy. Specifically, I'm thinking, I don't know, in my mind, I'm thinking high school. I don't know where you would think about where we should start encouraging more people in the church. But one of the first things that I would say, and then I'll let you go, AD,
sure, is
that there is a battle to be fought. And I was just thinking about when I was growing up, I never thought of Christianity in that context. And maybe more reform circles do, but specifically in my non-denominational, it was very church. These are the nice things you should do. These are the bad things you'd stay away. But there is a vicious battle going on for your souls, for your family souls, for your future family, your future wife or husband, your future kids. And the battle starts right away. It's not going to start happening later when you're ready for it, when you decide to start entering the battlefield, not when you graduate high school. Mm-hmm. But everything you are doing now is going to matter in the long term. You're building a foundation. You are creating the beginning of your life. And whatever you do, good or bad, it has lasting consequences to it. Yeah. And I just wish somebody would have told me that, because I never was told that. Specifically in the sexual arena.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I think so. A lot of us that grew up in the church, we have at least the first few verses of the Bible memorized even before we try. Like, we just know what it says. It's just something that we've read so often for a couple of reasons. One, they teach it in Sunday school. And two, because every time you attempt to start reading the Bible cover to cover, you start there and then you end somewhere in Leviticus, Mm-hmm. So we've read it a lot, but it's first for a reason, and there's some foundational things that you should always keep in mind. One of the things that I wish somebody focused on more with me is Genesis 1:28, and I'm going to read it, and it says here, I'll read the Christian Standard Bible. That's the new hotness for all the hipsters. It says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, every creature that crawls on the earth. So this is the game plan. This is the mission that God gave us. And so the decisions that you make when you're young, when you're in high school, when you're, even younger than high school, should be with that mission in mind. Being fruitful and multiplying, like, that's primary. So find a wife, love the wife, and then create more people. You know what I mean? Have relations with your wife, know your wife, and have kids early, and start planning to provide for those kids early, and start planning to provide for your household 2 generations down the line, because the Bible talks about how the blessings that he gives to his people are multi-generational. And so I certainly wish that I came across this earlier and that people really emphasize this with me, because what I did, what most people do, is I delayed adulthood. I had a job, I could grow a beard, I was making a lot of money, but I was living like a petulant teenager. I'd buy the latest video games. I'd buy, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of video games, booze, partying, things like that. I wasted so many resources that I could have had. I could be in a much better situation. My future for my kids could be in a much better situation than it is right now, but for that waste of resources. And so this is the plan, guys. It's super simple. Find a wife, marry her, have kids, and then from there, the plan is to rule the earth, to have dominion over the earth, Jordan Peterson, one of the things that was made him so popular is he said that one of the things we got to do is we got to make order out of chaos. And he's not all wrong about that. That's a biblical principle. It's not chaos out there, but dominion is what he's talking about, taking dominion over the earth. That's a huge, lofty plan, but it's a very simple, there's this very simple means to do it, being fruitful and multiplying. When you're young, you got to have a long-term focus like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And along those lines too, is when you do what God has commanded you to do, it might seem more difficult. It might seem harder for whatever reason. I mean, more like investing instead of just wasting your resources like you were talking about. But when you have a family, and we can talk about that, we both have a family, we have kids, it is one of the most enjoyable things in the world, not because of that in and of itself, but it's because God created it that way. Mm-hmm. And the things that are designed to be the biggest blessings in our life, the world wants to demonize. And I think that's another thing too that I would just encourage people to think about in their younger years is the most fulfilled you'll be, the most blessed you'll be in Christ, the most the biggest things you'll get out of life are going to be the most demonized things by the world, because there's a reason why they're demonized. There is a battle. There is Satan and the satanic forces, and they are trying to draw you away and make you hate and not live the life that God has created for you. And so I would really encourage people to be spending time with God, reading the scriptures, and really understanding that your biggest joys in life are going to come not from the life of multiple sexual partners or being really rich, but it's going to be from the relationships God's created for you to have.
There you go.
There you go. Anything else? Any other words of wisdom, or that's probably good enough for them? Let's go talk about the SBC now. And
Kevin here has a conspiracy theory, by the way. I know we didn't start with this, but
start with one.
But okay. Christian Standard Bible, if you rearrange the letters, SBC. Boom.
Ooh. Boom.
I'll never read from it again. Just
I feel really uncool. I didn't even know that was a version, and I definitely didn't know it was like the hipster one. That's for sure. So I'm feeling really old right now.
All the latest guys are doing it, man.
Really?
You gotta switch to it.
Is it a good version, or is it like the NLT storybook?
I like it, but it's definitely I like others better. Uh-huh. But all the people that used to push ESV are now pushing the CSB.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've been just chilling with the NET. I've been liking that one a lot. Has the notes when you have the Bible app, so you can click on and see what other translations say and stuff. It's really good. So there's a few controversies going on with the SBC, and that was going to be actually my conspiracy theory. I think the SBC doesn't really want conservatives in the SBC anymore. I don't know if that's conspiracy theories or not. There he is.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to use have the weird halo light thing happening.
Oh my goodness,
it's pretty good.
We have to go back to the potato quality.
What's up, man?
What's up, man? I'm sorry. I'm late, but for some reason, none of my web browsers would detect my amazing camera setup. That normally doesn't happen.
Well, we couldn't have you look better than us. So.
Well, now trust me, I'm not.
All right. Well, we were going to just talk about the SBC for a little bit. Marcus, with your grand entrance, let's introduce you to those listening. Marcus Pittman is here to join us. Thank you so much for coming on last minute. I mean, literally last minute, within the last 30 minutes. You have created quite a firestorm going on right now. I want to talk about that, but first we need to tell people where they can find you, find this firestorm, support you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So, Patreon.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You sound you're in a little tunnel, but you're good.
Okay. Well, anyway, you can find me at I'm King Ginger on Twitter. I am KINGGINGER.
Cool. And you have a new Patreon.
Patreon.com/I'm King Ginger. That's right.
That's right. And Patreon. You have a show on the Fight Laugh Feast Network like all of us do.
Yes.
And that is called Law and Profits.
Law and Prophets.
Law and Prophets, fantastic show. This is a true story. I don't think I've ever told you this, but my show came on before yours, and then you came on the network with Law and Prophets, and I was so jealous of that name. I'm like, oh, why couldn't I have thought of that for my show?
Here's why you couldn't have thought of it, because you don't read amazing books like Productive Christians. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
David Chilton that's David Chilton's. Yeah, it's called Law and Prophets.
Yeah.
Oh.
Marcus recommended that book to me, and he said today on Twitter that it changed his life. Me too, man. That book is amazing.
Is it?
It's so concise. The full title of the book is called Productive Christians in the Age of Guilt Manipulators. And it's a response to Ronald Sider's, was it Guilt? What, I don't even know the name of it.
Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger, I think.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger. And essentially, Snyder's entire book is you can solve all the problems of the world if you just take the amount of money rich people spend on golf every year. You'll be able to solve all the problems. And
makes sense.
Well, we know that's not true, but that's his entire argument for the whole time.
Oh my!
So
goodness.
it's a really good book, and it's one of it's so thoroughly packed with scripture, and it's such a short read. Ultimately, it's not that hard of a read.
Yeah.
That by the time you're done, you're like, oh, capitalism is not just an area where Christians should disagree.
Yeah.
It's actually prescribed by God as the standard for how the economy should function. Yeah. And there's judgment when societies don't do that.
Are you saying Jesus wasn't a socialist?
He was not.
What?
Not at all.
The hot take.
You wouldn't know that by looking at all the Bible verses people are quoting on my Twitter right now.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. We'll get to that in a second, but one of the things I just wanted to say to talk up Marcus a little bit, though, is like how he integrates the Bible with economics, capitalism is phenomenal. And even me as the business guy, MBA, entrepreneur, all that stuff, I still thoroughly enjoy your show and your commentary as well, your tweets, your live streaming. It's really enjoyable to see you unite the two together. I just absolutely love it.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Speaking of loving it, so let's talk about your tweets you had today, which I have to say,
what tweet?
I love them. And okay. I don't know if you want me to read them or you want to read them, but I have them here.
If you have them already pulled up, you have.
I got them already pulled up. I'm a professional here. Might not seem like it sometimes, but sometimes it is. All right. So he said, capitalism is a divine institution prescribed by God, and when governed according to his law, blesses nations. Socialism is the opposite of God's prescribed economy, a sinful violation of God's law, and brings economic despair and judgment to the nations who implement it. Now the rated R version, which is my favorite. Socialism is like abusive and adulterous sex, built on lust, coveting, selfishness, and a lack of love. One person exerts dominance over the other. Capitalism is like sex between a married husband and wife, an act of mutual love, no shame, and at the end, both parties are satisfied.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
so
I stand
good.
by it.
You should. And I did the little intro earlier where I was saying that you got retweeted by a very liberal institution, the SBC. No, I mean Vox. Sorry, I'm getting them confused.
Yeah.
You got retweeted by Vox.
Yes. Well, it was some writer for Vox, a trans writer. She goes by the Twitter name Transcribe. And so it is clever.
I like that.
And she just essentially said, I don't know how capital and marketing works. And I don't know, who knows how she finds this stuff.
Wait, she said you don't know how capitalism and market.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I thought she was admitting it. I'm like,
and so that just kicked off a tweet storm that's actually every time I refresh my page, it's still happening. It's from this moment off, but it's a good tweet. The reason it's a good tweet, even though it sounds vulgar, it's definitely not intended to be vulgar. It's legitimate, I think, explanation of how biblical sex should be done, and also capitalism, because capitalism should both parties should walk away from a transaction both happy and satisfied with what happened. Like that's that's how capitalism works. That's how God established it to work. And the thing is, like, the reason it's so offensive to people is because they have to make a decision between socialism and sex abuse.
You laid a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap. Like, they have to go. So, but or they just try to respond by saying how Jesus is a socialist, and we all know that's absolutely just not true. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
it kind of blows my mind why people that don't care about Jesus care if he was a socialist or not. I feel like I even deal with that a lot, where people who aren't Christians are emphatic that he was a socialist. And it blows my mind. You have no idea what socialist is, and you don't know who Jesus is either. So why do you think that is? Like, why is there this big push to have Jesus claim socialism?
Have what? You broke up a little bit.
Sorry, why do you think people are so adamant about making Jesus a socialist?
Well, I think because everybody, one of the responses that I got today was, "You haven't read the Bible," and I responded and said, "You haven't studied the Bible." So, because the problem is that if you just take it, for like on surface value, where Jesus says it's easier for to go through the eye of the needle and all that stuff than a rich man to enter into heaven. A camel to go through the eye of the needle than a rich man to enter heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It goes, oh yeah, or they'll quote the passage where Jesus says to sell everything. To the rich young ruler, he was told to sell everything that he had. Those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like Jesus is in opposition to being wealthy. But we know that's not true. And one of the things I mentioned on this week's episode of Law and Prophets was, I think it's, Deuteronomy 8, verse 17. It says, "You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms his covenant." So that passage right there is saying that the ability to even produce wealth is a sign of God's blessing on a nation, right? So when we institute system, when our entire nation, 50% of our nation is rooting for socialism, it's 50% of our nation rooting against a sign of God's blessing. And so God's going to judge our nation and hold us accountable, and he's going to give the socialists what they want, which is harder wealth creation and inability to produce. That's exactly what socialism gives you. And
so you're predicting Pete Buttigieg is going to win the nominee and the election this year?
Yes, I predict that Pete Buttigieg is going to win the election 100%. And so that's the only way I will call him. It's his only name. And I think it's important. It's important. I know it sounds crazy, but it's important because as I do believe he's going to get the nomination at this point. I think he's funded by enough CIA black op companies that it's
so you're a conspiracy theorist too.
But,
you'll fit right into this show.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, man. That's just the facts. Those are the people that fund them.
Yeah, that's what we say as well.
Yeah, but the more he gets power, the more difficult it's going to be to remind people that he's gay without getting in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I call him that name, by the way.
No, it's great. I think that just shows how much of a sense of humor God has, that somebody in the spotlight could have that name and be gay at the same time. Yeah. I mean, God has.
It might really be pronounced that way, but he changed the pronunciation.
Yeah, like Beto O'Rourke is Robert.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing. Oh, and by the way,
he's done with me. Look at him. He's done with me. He's the pastor on the show, so he's got to.
No, he's not anymore. He got kicked out.
Oh, not anymore. Oh, okay,
no,
you're fine.
No, he's a reject, so he can say whatever he wants. And
what?
Nothing. What?
He's not even here. He's not even here.
He's usually on Twitter when we do this show. I have to carry this whole thing.
I'm contemplating why you called me a reject. That was mean. No, I said the same thing last week, Marcus. We had Michael Foster on, and I said that we're being trolled with this guy, Pete Booty. We're being trolled, man.
I know. It really is, man. It really is a troll. It's just like the the corrupt politician in Texas that's stopping the abortion bills from being passed. His last name is Leach, and he's being leached on by the lobbies, the pro-life lobbies. So I always say that it's interesting that God gives your leaders the name that exposes who they are.
Yeah.
Which when you look at like scripture, names are important, and they do wind up signifying who they are.
Yeah. I mean, just look at you, King Ginger. Look at that beard.
Yeah, look at that beard, man.
One of the things you were also talking about, and then I want to kind of talk about this pro-life abolitionist thing, because I don't think a lot of people know what's going on outside of the abolitionist circles. So I want to get back into that. That's a good thing to talk about. But you were also in the, getting some reactions from the social media because you were talking about minimum wage, and you were using the parable that Jesus was talking about where someone would pay people the same amount for different amounts of work. And people were giving you, you were going back and forth with a lot of different people on that minimum wage isn't a godly thing. What was that all about?
So the parable of the vineyard worker is a great passage. That tweet blew up like crazy too.
I know,
but it just didn't get retweeted by a Vox writer, so it didn't have the same effect. But the principle there in that parable, the principle is that the vineyard worker can do what he wants with his property. And so I'll always say that because parables explain the spiritual with the natural has to be true. So, for example, if I said that if you throw a seed on thorny ground or scorched ground, that the plant will grow up anyway, that doesn't make sense in light of what we see in nature. So the parable wouldn't make sense. But the parable makes sense because seeds do get scorched or choked by thorns. So it's an accurate explanation. So if Jesus says, does the vineyard worker have a right to do with his money as he wishes, as a way to explain his sovereignty, then it makes sense that your cameras went away. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we're here.
I'm still there, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if the premise that the worker does not have a right to do with his money is false, then the parable doesn't make sense, and God is not
all falls
sovereign.
apart. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so what was the pushback?
He used that example because it was obviously true. Like that's the part that he's not making a complicated point. He used that because it was so easy that simple, shepherds and like they would understand it.
Yeah. And my theory is actually this is because in later chapters in Matthew, the Pharisees come back to him and try to entrap him about taxation and personal property. And so my theory is that was a response to his portion of the parable of the vineyard worker. So because it's only like maybe one or two chapters later.
Right, that's interesting. I like that theory.
Yeah. So when he says that you have a right to do with your personal property as you wish, they go, yeah. Well, what about taxes then? So that's where you get the taxes thing. But the point is that you have a guy. People, the socialist on my thread has been saying that the vineyard workers were all paid the same, and it was equality, but they weren't paid the same.
Right.
Why were they mad if they were paid the same?
Right.
Right.
So it just shows how socialists have they don't even understand basic math when it comes to economics.
Yeah, not surprising at all.
That
Or they wouldn't
somebody
be
who works,
socialists.
somebody who works less got paid more does not mean they all got paid the same. So,
Yeah.
So I think so. Here's the thing that I think maybe people in our audience could find useful, Marcus, because I think we're all with you on that. You know, that makes sense to all of us. But what about those people that say, well, I get it, but you know, for Christians, you know, this is an in-house thing. Like this is something. It's a secondary, tertiary issue. You can still be a Christian and vote for Bernie Sanders and be booty whatever, and you know, like it's debatable because some verses sound like there's some, you know how people say that kind of stuff all the time.
yeah, I think it's to vote for a socialist is to ignore and deny "thou shalt not steal" and "thou shalt not covet."
Mm-hmm.
It's absolute rejection of those principles.
Yeah.
And so like the reason why people say it's debatable is because we don't speak about it the way it really is. It is theft and covetousness. That
Mhm.
is what it is. It's also placing the government as the god of our nation, and the source of rescue.
Mhm.
And so, but it's also, probably most importantly, I think, it's a violation of covenant structure. So it's the same way as when we say, well, the government is the one to provide welfare instead of the church, or the government is the one that's supposed to take care of, educate our kids instead of the family. So we're violating those covenant structures that God has set down. So to vote for a socialist is to deny covenant theology.
Yeah, we talk about it as spheres of authority: the individual, the family, the church, and then the government. They have
Yeah,
respected
well, you do. I'm a
roles.
Presbyterian, so I'll call
Right.
it.
He's an evangelical. That's why we have to make it simple for them, you know?
We broke our streak. Instead of having Baptist Presby, we have two Presbys in a row on, and we got to get some more Baptists on this show. And I think it's the funny thing to me about socialism is, and I guess it's not a funny thing at all, but it seems to be the play that the peons that are for socialism that don't know anything are for it because they think it's helping people. They don't know any better. But the real play is the intellectuals and the elites are using it to put government in charge and to take over those other covenantal spheres or whatever you want to call them. And it's
Right.
really just a power play. Would you agree with that?
Well, let me say this too, because the people that are all about minimum wage from the power structures never have to worry about making minimum wage. You know, that doesn't affect them in any way. You know,
Right.
Well, it's actually a hedge from competitors coming into the market as well. And then it also provides less jobs for entry-level workers, which have to go more on government benefits. And then it also triggers union contracts when minimum wage goes up for them to renegotiate their contracts, which union donations then go into Democrat Party. So it's like a weird cycle. And that's why the Democrats are always pushing for more minimum wage, because then they get paid back in the circle of things.
Yeah, and it's easy to vote for.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very easy.
People always vote for minimum wage. I remember the story of it was like Pastor Jeff's son, and he was working at the movie theater, and the minimum wage increased a minimum of $10 an hour here in Arizona, on its way to 15. And so they had a big meeting, and the manager said that we've had to make the decision. We could either fire or let go some of our staff, or we can increase the cost of tickets and concessions.
Mhm.
And so they decided to increase the cost of tickets and concessions. So this lady comes in and she's just mad. She hands her ticket to Jeff's son, and he rips it, and she goes, "I can't believe you guys raised the cost of the tickets. I've been coming here for so many years and the tickets weren't ever this high," or whatever. And so Jeff's son says, "Well, ma'am, it's because the minimum wage increased and we have to pay for those." And she's like, "You're lying. You guys make millions of dollars." You know, so
Well, it's funny because this whole deal, you know, you're right. It's very easy to vote for, and the optics are really good for politicians that push it, and the optics are really bad for politicians that don't. support it. But at the end of the day, what it does is it creates a huge market for dependence. It creates a huge slave market for the people that like to deal in human flesh. So you know, you either this theater you talked about, they decided to raise ticket prices. Well, some businesses are just going to decide either to get out of business or to just cancel altogether or to find, you know, machines that can do the labor. And so people will be now on the doles. And these people that are on the doles become Democrat voters because they don't want to end that gravy train because their lives depend on it. It's a rational decision.
Yeah. But also, I just want to say that minimum wage increases is a racist decision too. Because the Davis-Bacon, I think is the name of it, the Davis-Bacon Act in 1931 was the nation's first attempt at a minimum wage law, and the result of that when it went to law, I'm going to pull up the quote here. It says, this is from Walter Williams, and he says, our nation's first minimum wage law, the Davis-Bacon Act of 1931, had racist motivation. During its legislative debate, its congressional supporters made such statements as, that contractor has cheap colored labor that he transports, and he puts them in cabins, and it is his labor of that sort that is in competition with white labor throughout the country. During hearings, American Federation of Labor President William Green complained, colored labor is being sought to demoralize wage rates. So what you had was, you had free black men in the North who were working harder and cheaper, and it was forcing white people to actually reduce how much they got paid. So their response was to go to court and try to issue a mandatory minimum wage. It was the first minimum wage in our nation, and it was actually rejected in the courts. And it wasn't until the New Deal that minimum wage was allowed to actually come forth. But initially, it was seen as unequal and racist, and it was shut down. So this is why when usually one of the first people that get hurt when there's a minimum wage increase is they let go disabled workers who can only do a little bit of stuff, because now their value is more, so they have to do more. So hiring someone who's disabled, who say can't maybe climb up on a ladder or something, even at a low income job, if they're unable to climb up a ladder, they're not worth the employee that can climb up a ladder and do the register. So they're usually the first ones out of the market. Yeah, right.
Yeah. It goes back to my simple formula that I use for everything. Value equals benefit minus cost. And as soon as the cost exceeds the benefit, then value is negative, and you're not going to do it. You're not going to make a transaction. You're not going to have that consensual sexual relationship, as Marcus would put it.
So what you're saying is, if Gospel Coalition was serious about protecting the most vulnerable among us, they would be against minimum wage laws.
Man, they're not serious about that stuff, man. They're in it for the clicks. I think we know it by now. They're in it for the clicks.
Is that what you think their motivation is for the ERLC? Is it just for publicity and getting more people viewing them?
I can't say what their motivation. I mean, I have conspiracy theories about what their motivation is.
You're on the right show for that, sir.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, so if we put George Soros funding aside, I would say actually, I don't know what their motivation is besides that. No, I think they do it for they want to be accepted by by political powers. And so this is their way to do that. I think they're, especially within the ERLC, there's a huge drive to be part of the political cool club. And so they want to be accepted and embraced in that. And I don't know, like it's hard to say if there's anything more sinister than that, but that's pretty sinister on its own. So
yeah, I agree. And I think it's more than just want to be accepted. I think they want to share in the power. And that was kind of what I was touching on with the minimum wage, with socialism versus capitalism. What we're seeing with critical race theory is it's playing on the emotions of people that aren't in power to get them to come along with it and make it seem good. Like, hey, don't you want justice? Don't you want fairness? Don't you want to pay people a living wage? And all of these things. But all it results in is more government overreach. And it's strange to me seeing Christians supporting this. And it's strange that they're going along with this. And do they really think that they are going to ever be accepted? Do they really think that they're ever going to be given a share in the power of what they're trying to push on us? I don't think they will.
No. Until they're going to have to do a lot more than just women preachers to be accepted by the power structures.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're going to have to outright abandon. I mean, we see it a little bit, especially in the PCA, but just abandon biblical views of marriage and all these other things. It's going to be a lot. Like they've taken the cookie, but they're not going to get the whole. They're only going to get a bite of it. They're not going to get the whole thing, because there's no way that they're going to be just accepted into the political world and remain as part of evangelicalism.
Oh, I totally think that it's not even a cookie. It's like the scraps on the ground from what that girl was talking about, right? That was pulling on the cloak of Jesus. Like even the dogs got the scraps. I think the world views these liberal Christians as the dogs that are going to do the dirty work and penetrate and get in and break up what we have here with our denominations, with our organizations. But when it comes time to get back and get their reward, they're going to be put outside.
Right.
That's all they are.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm starting to realize why you get blocked by everybody, Matt, and nobody blocks me. You're a savage.
I just want to be retweeted by Vox someday.
Yeah. Keep trying. I think you'll get there one day.
Possibly.
Marcus has been working on this for a while. You know?
That's the truth, man. But you know, the thing is, like we need to be retweeted by these organizations a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think it's important that we say things. Well, I was talking to people about this week, and like one of the values of Twitter is that it forces people to be unable to toe the line, because they have to read in presuppositions into your tweets because there's just not enough context.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the greatness of that is they have to imply all these different things just by saying something simple, or like about scripture or the Bible. They'll be like, yeah, but what about when the Bible says this? So it automatically exposes what they believe about scripture, and also, you know, Twitter is a battlefield. I don't think there's any other use for Twitter really, or mainly, other than to share news and to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's just you know, maybe Trump is responsible for that, and it's probably not what Twitter wanted to be, but it's definitely what it's become. So, you know, if you're going to be on Twitter, you have to expect to fight. And so I think it's a great place to troll these people. This is what the conclusions I've come to, probably just, you know, in the past few months, really, is just the goal of Twitter should be to troll people so that they share your message. And then you can share the truth. So because that's what people like this stuff that's happening with Vox right now. Like, honestly, guys, if you could see it, like, it's like my Twitter mentions are still just refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these people are, I mean, like, there's people like going through my Twitter history. Like, somebody shared a tweet and said, no, he's a racist too, because it was something I shared about Jamar Tisby that was like black church is good, white business is bad, or something I said. Like,
what a racist.
But now I'm a racist according to these people. But it's just constant, nonstop, just refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, you know, how one, it like I'm not bowing down to the mob. So I hope, like, you know, it's a good example that I can, you know, just laugh off, you know, fight and laugh at the same time, you know?
Yeah, that's one of our goals on Reformgelical, is to do that for people, to give them permission and feel confidence to do the same.
I think when you were speaking, I don't know where Matt Smethurst lives, but I think I heard him like scream in agony when you said that Christians should troll people on Twitter. I mean, that's like the 11th commandment. You can't troll. Christians can't troll.
I know.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think I think when the Apostle Paul said, if you want to circumcise people, go ahead and cut off the whole thing. I think that is that would be seen as like a really good Twitter post.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so it's like some of Paul's responses to people, even Jesus's responses, would have been amazing tweets.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I think it's just given us a platform to really deal. I mean, one of the things that's great about Twitter is it just shows because like my pastor's not on Twitter, Jeff is not on Twitter, and I'll tell him what's going on Twitter, and he just doesn't, like, it just goes like right over his head.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you have to understand, like, what's happening. Yeah, what's happening within like Reformed evangelicalism. I'm not talking about secularism, like these people on Vox who are straight pagans. I'm talking about like Reformed evangelicalism. This stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like this
Yeah.
is very dark and wicked stuff that's happening. Racist, the straight liberal, straight pushing socialism. They don't even hide. AD, how long was it, man? Like you were trying to say, remember, I know, because like me and you, we've been talking about them going to socialism for like at least a year or two, right? And and remember, they were like, no, we're not.
We published our
What'd you say?
We published our episode in July of 2018.
Yeah, okay. So July of 2018, we were like, this stuff is going to the liberals.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely happening. They're going liberal, and now they don't even like play around with it anymore. No. They'll just they'll outright admit it. They're retweeting Bernie Sanders. They're liking posts by Vox writers. Like, it's just insane what's happening.
It is totally insane. I think that's go ahead.
Did you guys see the Jamar Tisby? He did a speech at like Covenant College or something. And in it, he like changed the words of one of Jesus's sayings where he's like pronouncing the woes to people. And he said, woe to all of those who trolled you on Twitter. And they
no,
I swear, man, I swear.
That's a woe.
I gotta find it. I gotta send you that clip. It's so stupid. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
Oh, you got it. We'll put it on our Reformgelical.
They called you Marxists. Woe to them for trolling you on Twitter.
I think that's the other benefit of Twitter too. Is not just that we should be trolling people and really like exposing their foolishness, because that's what I think it is. I think we're exposing the foolishness, the foolish wisdom, but also it's drawing them out to their positions. Because I don't think they would have ever had to ever come out with exactly what their positions were of being socialist, being Christian gays, and all this stuff if Twitter didn't exist. I think that's the other great thing about it.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
I don't even know where to go from here. Okay, so have you been following the SBC stuff that's been going on, Marcus?
Unfortunately.
You have. And I've been thinking about this, like, why do we care? And people have asked me this before. Why do we care if we're not in the SBC, what's going on in the SBC? You guys have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's important because the SBC is the largest conservative denomination in the country.
That's it, yep.
So if the SBC is going this way, this just shows you the direction of culture completely, and this is why, it's great to see men like Tom Askell and Jared and Longshore and founders like really take the blunt of this fight. And because you see that it's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as it could be.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And it may not be our castle, but it's definitely our flanks. And we got to be trying to reinforce those as well, because if those go and we're all by ourselves, like there is something to say about fighting alongside our brothers and sisters that aren't in our same denomination, because ultimately we're on the same team. We're all Christians. So we should be supporting people like Tom Askell and Jared Longshore, the Founders Ministry, because it's important. It's really, really important. I was thinking of, I have a verse today in Galatians 2:4, where Paul's talking about how the Judaizers were coming in And he says in verse 3, yet not even Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And this occurred because of false brethren secretly brought in, who came in by stealth to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that it might bring us into bondage, to whom we did not yield submission even for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. And I just think like this is what we need to be doing with the liberals in the SBC, the people in ERLC, is we need to resist them as much because they're trying to put us into bondage. They're trying to impose more than just the gospel on us. And it's important for us to be in this fight.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think that one of the things that Founders Ministries did is really waken like the flyover states to what's happening in the SBC. Because I mean, I remember I went home to Virginia, and my parents' church and my grandparents' church, they've been going there for who knows how long. My mom, since she was a kid, they probably only have like 25 people in their church, and we went there and this Christmas, and that's what they wanted to talk to me about was what was happening with Founders and the SBC and the documentary and stuff. And so,
Wow.
this is a church, where everybody's at least over 50 years old, and they're interested about it and wasn't aware of that stuff was happening. And that's just one church.
Yeah.
So I think like the SBC convention in June is going to be pretty incredible in terms of, I think there's going to be a lot of people there.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. Cause I think it was by design that those smaller churches didn't know what was going on. I mean, they're not that terrible at communication. They could have gotten the newsletter out about what was all going on, but they're purposely, to me, it seems like creating rules and all this stuff, not using technology, not helping smaller churches get there through the richer churches donating, where they don't have a voice, they don't have a say, because the big city churches that have more money are the ones that are going to agree with them and what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to get out there and we need to fight because it's important. And if you know an SBC person that wants to go, maybe support them.
Yeah,
all right.
For sure.
We got some questions from the audience, the live people watching. The first one is, what is the difference between a liberal and a leftist? I believe that came from Micah.
I don't think there is a difference. Is there a difference?
I don't think there's a difference anymore. Maybe you could have made an argument for classical liberal.
Like an academic liberal?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there is any difference because they all vote Democrat and they all.
Yeah, these days we use the terms interchangeably, I think. But some people want to insist on a different definition, like a classical liberal and stuff like that. And there's a difference there, but for the most part, most people just use it interchangeably.
Yeah. And again, the result is the same. They're both voting for Democrats, so it doesn't matter how they distinguish themselves academically.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So we got questions for King Ginger. Now that your health has improved, any video projects coming down the pike?
So I'm currently working with End Abortion Now to do like mini like Vice style documentaries about certain key issues in the abortion. So working on so there'll be maybe several 5-minute videos, and that essentially right now that's about it. My goal and my long-term plan is to start like a documentary film studio and start producing some good documentaries all the time.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, documentaries are so important, I think, to opening people's eyes, shaping the conversation, that we need to figure out a way to sustain, support financially, and continue to create great documentaries, docuseries, cinedocs, whatever you want to call them. We need to be in that space. So people want to support you in that. Do they go to your Patreon, and is that the best way to support you in that stuff right now?
Yeah. Support me on Patreon, and then that way, that frees me up to work on other side projects. And usually, most of the projects I do on the side are some sort of filmmaking. So,
got it. All right. So next question, and maybe this relates to what I wanted to hear about what was going on in Texas between the pro-life and abolitionist. Do you have any cool stories about babies are still murdered here?
I mean, I just, I don't have anything specific, but I went to was in Oklahoma this weekend, because they're looking to pass Senate Bill SB 13, and just when you go there and you're around a bunch of people that are pro-life, and they come up to you and talk about how the movie impacted you. That's pretty cool, because I've never met these people before, and it was just constant, hard to go somewhere in the hallway without people stopping you. And the same was at the
G3.
G3. Yeah. You were walking around with me at G3.
I did. All the time. It was constant. How many people were impacted by your film?
Yeah. So, I don't even know most of these people, and they've seen it. And, like for me, like Babies Are Still Murdered Here, that was like just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, like, a lot of people don't know this, but like, according to my doctor, like, I made that film on, like, I don't know, like 10% of heart capacity. So
that's
Now,
incredible.
so now, I mean, like, I remember like the last month of like editing that film, it was just like I would just sleep, and then I'd edit some, and then I'd sleep, and then so it was just like this weird, like almost impossible that the film even got done. And then and it was just like an energy drink all times of the day too, just to, like, stay awake. And then once I had open heart surgery, like now, like I'm like probably like 95% recovered at this point. So still can't lift stuff over 15 pounds, but that'll probably be for another few weeks or whatever. And then but as already, like, my energy level is just insane at this point. Like, it's insane.
That's great.
So
Look out,
so
Vox.
I can't wait to make a film. Even like making out, because I worked on the Synodoc for Founders, and a lot of people don't know this, but like I mean, David realized that I just wasn't, like, I just had no energy. Like, I would go to sleep as soon as we got to the hotel, which I would never do on a production. Like, usually in production, you wait until the director goes to bed, and then after all the footage is saved and backed up and all the batteries are charged. And I didn't do that. And so I felt really bad. But just the amount of work of the Southern Baptist Convention, the last day as we were heading to the airport, I was just throwing up constantly. I worked myself to exhaustion on that thing.
Wow.
Just because I just didn't have the health and stuff. But now I got 2 new heart valves. They are the largest available adult heart valve that you
Wait,
can
their
get.
sizes?
They're sizes of heart valves, yeah.
No way.
So I had heart surgery when I was 16, and they put the 2 smallest adult valves in. So I've really never had the amount of energy that I have now.
So you supersized your heart valves.
That's great, man.
I did, yeah, man. So that's just been my prayer, is I've just been, Lord, let me use this energy and really, like, fight. Like, I want to use this energy to fight. So
that gives me a lot of excitement, and can't wait to see what you got
yeah,
next.
I just need investors, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Once I get that, man, once I'm self-funded and I got a company, and yeah, man, it's gonna be great. I can't wait.
That's great. Another person wanted to maybe suggest a documentary on the council meetings that you and Babies Are Murdered Here started. Going to the councils.
Yeah, I think the Babies Are Still Murdered Here movie is kind of really pretty much that.
Oh, okay.
So has he seen the film? What's wrong?
I don't know. What's wrong with you people?
That's like the whole last half of the film.
Someone got busted. So, okay, we have a few minutes left. We try to keep it around an hour, but if we go a little later, whatever. I want to know about what happened between the pro-life Republican in Texas that killed the abolitionist bill. Or I don't know if it was technically an abolitionist bill, but it was basically a ban on abortions.
Yeah.
And the pro-lifer killed it, which I am totally confused about. I thought you were running on a platform to stop abortion. What happened?
Sorry, I'm distracted because in my DMs are really awful DMs.
It's okay. AD's on Twitter all the time.
Yeah, no, like, these are just really, really bad. So the thing is, we hear, like, cross politic they talk about how even a heartbeat bill is even a heartbeat bill is like throwing all the plays. You know what I mean? Like just running all the plays. And Gabe and Toby talk about that all the time.
Uh-huh.
The problem with that analysis is that yes, we should run all the plays. However, we're not the ones running the plays. If we were running the plays, I wouldn't have a problem with a heartbeat bill as much as if the pro-life lobbyists are running the plays.
Okay, so when you say we, you're not talking about.
I'm talking about reformed, gospel-centered Christians.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. So but when we see these plays, they're being done by pro-life lobbyist groups, and my position is that the lobbyist groups are enemies. So, and what I mean by that is the lobbyist group. So usually how a political lobby works is the lobby gives money to bribe the politician.
Right.
Right. But in this instance, specifically with the pro-life movement, the Republican Party gives money to the lobbies to endorse candidates. So what you have here is this is why several pro-life state organizations. So Georgia Right to Life is a good example of this. Georgia Right to Life was asked to endorse a pro-choice Republican by National Right to Life. And they said, no, that's a violation of everything we stand for. And so the response was National Right to Life broke up with Georgia Right to Life, and they became Georgia Life Alliance, which is the National Right to Life. So essentially, any pro-life organization that doesn't go toe to toe with the political lobbies in terms of voting for getting Republicans elected, that's their entire case. They will tell you that they exist to get Republicans elected.
Right. So they're not pro-life. They're an extension of the Republican Party.
That's right.
And they're designed solely to stir up the base, to get base support through the most motivating issue for the base, that is abortion. Yeah. And so that's what happened in Texas. Is the Texas politician, the Republican who's backed by the lobbyist group, was basically saying you can't support this bill, and they killed it?
Yeah. So, well, in Texas is interesting because you had the people that were completely in favor of it. You had the governor that said he would sign it. And then you have Jeff Leach, who was the sole vote to determine if it would go before the floor to be debated and voted on.
So he was in the committee that was holding it.
Yes. And so it was the first bill to actually go to committee, which was huge. The first abolition bill to go to committee. And then so you had essentially what I believed happened, and I can't prove this, but essentially he was told, essentially, you will be if you reject this bill, you'll be given power. And so we've seen that since he's rejected the bill, the pro-life group in Texas, I'm not sure what the name of the Texas Life Group is, but they gave him an award for courage, pro-life courage.
Oh my!
And then he was at the National Right to Life, the March for Life in D.C. that the president spoke at. So I don't know if he got to speak with the president or talk about an endorsement because of his rejecting it. And so there's like and then he's good friends with the governor, and then he still makes these videos talking about how he's still pro-life and
oh my gosh,
he's so happy to be at the March for Life and all this other stuff. But he literally stopped the bill that was going to end it. So I don't know if the governor of Texas was like, hey, you got to shut this bill down. I know I promised that. Yeah, I know I promised that this would happen, but we can't let it actually go through. It looks like it's going to go through. We can't let that happen because I don't want to be put in a position to where I have to, veto it or something.
And nothing makes me more upset.
Yeah, and then of course you had the pro-life lobbies who were like, wait a minute, this bill would give the death penalty to women who have abortions. Well, of course it would.
Yeah,
as it should.
right.
So,
Let's be consistent
anyway,
here. Nothing makes
yeah.
me more upset than the people that are supposed to be on our own team betraying us and backstabbing us.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
I
it's
know.
the worst. It's like there's so much more we could accomplish if only our team would stay together and not cower out and be the biggest cowards ever.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, whatever your driving force is. I mean, maybe it's not cowardice. Maybe it's just power hungry and making a play. Who knows? All right. We're running out of time. Probably both.
I said that's probably more what it is.
Oh, probably more what it is.
Power hungry, yeah.
Yep. All right. And let's see. Let's say goodbye by saying, where can we find you again, King Ginger?
Yeah. Twitter.com/I'm King Ginger and Patreon.com/I'm King Ginger.
AD, where can we find you at?
Real AD Robles on Twitter and YouTube, AD Robles.
And you can find me, How to Build a Tent. You can find our show, Reformgelical, on YouTube and all the social media sites. Saying good night for all of you, all of us. Thank you for watching. Please share the show, like the show, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless.
Take care, guys.